You're about to hear the story of Amanda Hiebert, a Spokane Valley woman who graduated from East Valley High School with honors, where she was also a 4-year varsity athlete in both track and volleyball. She then went on to graduate from college and get a steady job. But what most people never knew was the battle that she was facing in her mind on a daily basis. Amanda is finally ready to uncover her story, and what she shared with me is that she's always expressed herself best when she writes. And so she will be speaking aloud her story that she wrote, because there is power in what we say. And when we speak out the lies and the fear that has kept us silent for so long, we can finally take back our power and break free from our shame.
As someone who has dealt with anxiety ever since I can remember, an obsessive compulsive disorder that started soon after, coming clean with my story is anxiety-provoking in and of itself. I personally fear that by sharing my story, I will be judged and viewed as a failure, or perhaps people will think I am inadequate or view me as crazy. I will be unlovable. These fearful thoughts have kept me silent, and they've made me feel isolated and alone in my battle. Before I get into the details of my mental health struggles, have you ever thought about your earliest memories of unwanted feelings? If you're anything like me, once one memory comes to mind, it is then followed by a dozen more. These memories can produce in us the same feelings now as they did then. My earliest memory of having an unwanted feeling was somewhere around the age of 4. I was standing outside a grocery store with a group of adults. All I wanted to do was say something, but every time I tried to talk, an adult would talk over me. It may seem like a small incident, but looking back at that specific memory, I felt like my words didn't matter. These thoughts were a starting block of insecurity and uncertainty. Then there were all the times of being excluded. I remember one night I was hanging out with some friends at a wrestling match, and about halfway through, they were planning to leave and do something else. And then the painful but oh so familiar phrase, "We don't want Amanda to come with us." I constantly felt like I didn't belong, and so I stuck to what I was good at: school and sports. It was during this time that my mind started to run wild. I thought I was legitimately going crazy, and nobody would understand. I was diagnosed with pretty severe OCD. This is something I'd been dealing with for a long time, but I didn't know it was actually a disorder or something that could be helped. My symptoms ran the gamut, from fear of contamination to fear of losing control and harming myself or others, to religious ideas and to order and perfect symmetry. I'm afraid to admit to some of my OCD symptoms, but I'm here to be as upfront and honest as I can, in hopes that maybe it will help someone else know they aren't alone. One of my first memories of OCD was sometime in elementary school when my family was at the pumpkin patch. The fields of pumpkins were full of leaves, and prior to this trip, I had never seen leaves in a pumpkin patch, only dirt and random pumpkins. This was so cool to me. I just kept repeating, "I have never seen the pumpkin patch have leaves. I've never seen the pumpkin patch have leaves." I don't know what triggered this, but I couldn't stop repeating the phrase. Then came the time where I had to circle the house 3 times before I could leave. Why? I don't know. But if I didn't do it, I was certain something bad was going to happen. As I recall some of these symptoms, they are almost laughable to me now, but back then, the obsessions and compulsions were so real. In my senior year of high school, my OCD took a painful new form. I was at a youth group, and the youth pastor asked a question about, will murderers go to heaven? That single sentence started an obsession with the word murder. I couldn't get the word out of my head no matter how hard I tried. The word replayed in my mind so much, I started to think I was actually going to murder someone. I then became convinced I had to avoid wearing the color red, because red was the same color as blood, and I was afraid by wearing red, I would act on these thoughts I had. Please understand though, I did not want to hurt anyone. I knew I didn't, but I was still so afraid I would. Because I didn't want to harm others, my obsession then flipped to the word suicide. Just like the word murder, suicide was on repeat in my head non-stop. I remember breaking down and telling my mom I thought I was going to kill myself. I felt like I had failed her as a child, and it was so painful to see her reaction. She was clearly shocked to hear those words come out of my mouth, and she also started crying. You see, my mom was always there for me. I knew my sister and I were her biggest priorities, but I felt so much shame admitting to her the thoughts that were so real in my mind. Me telling my mom led me going to counseling. I can't recall the intake test my counselor used, but I remember my score was a 22, which was severe considering that when a patient hits a score of 24, they have to go to a live-in treatment facility. I continued to go to counseling and still do to this day, but back then, I was too ashamed to tell people what I was going through. Over the last 10 years, I have done a lot of work to find healing. I even worked through exposure therapy, where I had to face my obsessions head on. To give you a little more insight, in order to graduate from counseling, my counselor told me I needed to reach an 8 on that intake test that I initially scored a 22 on. However, I was only ever able to score an 11 until I started taking antidepressants. Deciding to take antidepressants was really hard for me. On the one hand, I had a professional telling me I needed them, but on the other hand, I was battling a stigma from those around me, thinking I didn't actually need them. For a long time, I felt immense shame about taking them. I told no one. In fact, last fall, I tried to go off of them. I wanted to see who I was without them, but it was clear that I still needed them. Once again, the thoughts of failure and inadequacy came flooding back. I am so thankful for a church friend who heard my struggle and said to me, "There is no shame in taking antidepressants." I've had my ups and downs, but I am in a good place now. I see the OCD for what it is. It is not me. It is my anxiety talking. For years, I feared this part of my story would define me, but I don't fear that anymore. I did not share this with you to get sympathy, but to be open and real, and to show the world that you can still have a full life, even when the past experiences tell you otherwise. I'd be lying if I said I no longer deal with anxiety and OCD, but when I do, it is in a lesser form. We all have things that we deal with and areas where the enemy wants us to feel isolated and alone. Here's the thing though, if we are open about it, I believe we will find more similarities in our struggles than differences. Right now, I am surrounded by an amazing church family that is helping me to grow and step into a fullness that I haven't known before. I have a group of wonderful friends that truly care, and I also want to say that smile that you see me wear, that is genuine. And the goofball that loves to dance and be weird, that is also genuine. As is my laugh that will make others laugh, it's all genuine. I am not ashamed of this part of my story anymore. My value is not in my anxiety or my performance. My value is in Jesus. Life is too short to not have fun and to not see the goodness that I am surrounded by.